Welcome back to another episode of Drat Drake podcast.
Hello,
with
hello.
our special guest, Tyler Johnson. Sorry, Dr. Tyler Johnson.
Dr. Tyler Ellis Johnson.
Yes.
I've not ever met another like Dr. Tyler Johnson, but maybe.
Which is actually surprising, yeah, because I feel like Johnsons are pretty common.
Pretty common.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But yeah, no, so Tyler and I go decent amount of time back. I mean, all the way through beginning of vet school, which was almost 10 years ago now. So it's been a while.
Wow.
So how you been doing, man?
Living the life.
In the forest of plants.
In the forest.
Yeah.
With the Monstera background.
Yeah.
Like you're
My
deep in the
signature.
jungles. But yeah, so I mean, granted, I mean, obviously we meet up every so often with, our mutual group of friends, but I guess just for everyone who doesn't know you, let's kind of just walk people through, obviously you went to CSU for vet school, but then afterwards you went off and did your internship, and kind of give us a quick recap of where your veterinary experience lies.
Holy moly. Okay. Yeah. So vet school, graduated 2018 from Colorado State, went and did a rotating internship in small animal surgery, medicine, kind of pretty emergency focused at North Carolina State, 2018 to 2019. Then went to Illinois, did my residency in emergency and critical care for 3 years. So finished that in 2022. Then moved back to North Carolina, was kind of in like private practice for a year. Well, I was like achieving my diplomat status, achieved that in October, and then
Congrats.
yeah,
That's huge.
finished with that and kind of decided private practice was okay, but kind of wanted to learn more.
I'm making too much money. Let's go back.
Too much money. And I decided to sign up for another like learning endeavor and decided to do a fellowship in extracorporeal therapies. So it's pretty much all the fun of taking blood. I'm essentially a tick. I take blood out, do something to it, give blood back. A lot of fun. And
yeah, I guess if you could describe that a little bit more for, I guess, people that are not. No, because I mean, obviously, when you say extracorporeal therapy, like what's involved in doing that?
Yeah, so it is the process of taking blood out of the body, doing something to it. So in my realm, we can do like dialysis, plasma exchange, or hemoperfusion. So essentially what those mean are like I filter blood like a kidney would. I exchange plasma, so I split blood components into plasma, throw away the donor's plasma, give back new plasma, or in the case of hemoperfusion, run it through like essentially carbon or polymer filter to kind of try to clean it, lack of a better way to say it, and then give it back to the patient.
And can you give us like examples of the use case for each one of those?
Yeah, for hemodialysis, any of the three actually we could do for blood purification due to toxicity. So kind of whatever, it depends on the drug that you're dealing with, like what they've been intoxicated with. But each drug sort of would fit in a different realm depending on its volume and distribution, protein binding, and molecular size. So we kind of look at those things and then decide on the modality from there. So all three good for that. For hemodialysis, we can also support patients through acute kidney injury as well. I say support because I think there's a little misconception that we're like fixing them, which we're not. We're just sort of taking the pressure off the kidneys, giving them some time to figure their lives out and, sort of get back on track.
Get through vet school.
What's that?
Get through vet school.
Yeah, right. Like, they need a vacation. They just gotta figure it out for a second. Yeah, so kind of support that patient. They feel infinitely better. Like I wasn't a believer before I did this completely, but then I did it and I was like, I'm a believer. So yeah, it's great for that. We can also, in theory, for all three modalities, we can also remove more inflammatory things as well. This is where these are the horizon type endeavors with extracorporeal therapy. So we can look at removing like TNF alpha, IL-6, like we could remove
Wow.
those things. In the setting of autoimmune disease, we remove a lot of like immune complex problems. So all your IgG, IgM that's like acutely causing destruction of stuff. And then, yeah, the kind of the big modalities for that are going to be plasma exchange or hemoperfusion. That's kind of it. And then there's
That's way
like
more intense than, yeah, no, I mean,
And
I didn't
so
realize
beautifully explained, by the way. I gotta commend you
oh,
on that. That was
100%.
like one of the best CE minutes I've ever experienced. That was
Yeah, I
wonderful.
just didn't realize how like you had kind of those three separate modalities. It sounds like you can kind
yeah.
of just pick what's appropriate for whatever you're trying to filter out of the blood.
Mhm. Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
well, I was just going to ask, like, I guess to back up a little bit, for so obviously you're trying to learn this in your fellowship, which sounds
Mhm.
like you're already fairly knowledgeable about it. But do you see fellowships as a whole becoming a more common thing that like we're either going to have to start moving towards or that more people will start to find out about and become interested in? What's your perspective on that?
I think when we're talking about extracorporeal, yes. I think some of the more niche things like don't have big fellowship numbers. Like there aren't a ton of fellowships out there for extracorporeal therapy, but there are a number of like other fellowships available. So you think about like the cardiothoracic type things that are starting to come around, like open heart surgery and whatnot. That in theory is a fellowship. Not many people are doing it at this point, but that's another one. So I think it honestly will become more prevalent for people who might want to push the envelope a little bit. The hard thing is with a lot of these more niche things, you start to maybe pigeonhole yourself a little bit, just a little bit. So it's not like I couldn't go and do this anywhere, like
Mhm.
I have to be in a place that can support it from
Like
an
an academic
infrastructure.
institution?
Well, academic or like very large specialty hospital
Sure.
in the minimum. And so you gotta kind of like keep up with the costs associated with it as well.
Yeah.
So this is where these become a little bit like maybe fellowships in the future could be more of a thing, but I don't think right now. You have to kind of really, really like it and
Mm.
really want to do it to like balance out the need, I think, and the cost to like do it.
And who is running these fellowships? Like, are they just professors that have been, out there for a while and they've had an
Yeah.
interest in one specific area? Like, how do you get to the point where you're now
Yeah.
running the fellowship?
Yeah. So if I just like track back my training lineage, I guess you could call it. If we think about, so actually Larry Calgill is like the kind of the grandfather of extracorporeal therapy in veterinary medicine. He's been doing dialysis since I think the late 70s, early 80s in some
Wow.
capacity.
Wow.
And a ton of research has come from Larry Calgill about like extracorporeal therapies in general. And so it's kind of from him. My mentor was trained by him as a fellow at Davis after he had become a criticalist as well. So it sort of passes down in that manner. So after completing a fellowship, I could, if I wanted, I could try to have a fellow at some point. A lot of times, what that looks like is actually so say I go to another teaching institution that doesn't have an extracorporeal service, maybe I try to get it going. Kind of my first fellows would probably be my colleagues, right? And like teaching them how to do it as well. So not necessarily like a fresh like fresh off the residency train fellow, but like maybe other vets or other criticalists who have already been established for a little bit, but teaching them how to do it helps them to help that service grow, sort of thing. So I don't know. I think it's kind of interesting how these happen, but my mentor, Wada, he restarted the North Carolina fellowship from scratch pretty much after the last person back to Europe. So he pretty much just like picked it up and ran with it.
But when you get to that point where you are considering creating a fellowship, like say you were in that role,
Yeah.
are you also simultaneously trying to kind of push the boundaries of where the study is going? Are you looking at
Oh,
like what's being done in human med and
mhm.
seeing what's potentially applicable to veterinary
Yeah.
medicine?
Yeah. I think we have these like types of questions all the time, really. Like even just Friday, we had a case that was having seizures and increased like intracranial pressure, we think from hyperammonemia or like high ammonia, right? And we had a really long conversation about could we like support this patient by just going in and like taking out some ammonia. It's it's really dialyzable. It's a really small molecule. And so we're like always looking at, is there an extracorporeal application for like a lot of these problems? Where we run into trouble is that at least in veterinary medicine and in human medicine too, is we don't always have a lot of like supporting literature, right? Because a lot of it is theoretical. There's not like a huge patient population for a lot of these applications. And so to some degree, you're sort of running on it with like, hey, maybe it'll help. We're kind of out of options. And if it does help, then it's like, oh, sweet, like we can do some stuff with this moving forward. But if it doesn't help, it's like, oh, well, it didn't help.
So
Like,
you're like in the legit scientist role at that
kind
point.
of, sort
Yeah,
of. And
you're
some of
pushing
this
the
stuff.
boundaries,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
cool. That's cool.
Are there any, is it a relatively benign treatment then? Can you argue that if this is like, if this was a patient that was sick and
Mm.
you offered this on the table, is there any way one of the primary care physicians or doctors can push back and comment about any potential risks? Or do you have a
Yeah.
lot of strength to say, well, you mean, why don't we just try it because it's not very harmful?
No, I wouldn't say that. I mean, I think there's a lot that goes into it. So,
Mhm.
a few of the big considerations are like the amount of blood that is going to be outside the patient's body, right? And can they handle
Oh,
that?
fair, fair.
Yeah. So, for instance, this patient we were talking about from Friday, it was a cat. Cats are hard because they're already small, but then you like take away sometimes like pushing 20% of their blood volume in
Mm,
order to like go
mm,
through this circuit. And now you've created this like essentially hypovolemic, I'm bleeding patient because I've
fair.
removed that to like try to do something with it.
Got it.
So can they handle that? It's like one of the big things. We have to use anticoagulants in order to
Mm,
keep the blood from clotting as it's going through the machine and the circuit. And so can they handle that, or are they at risk for like developing clots? Because then are we just gonna like take this blood out? Is it gonna clot and then we're in a mess, right? Because now we
yeah.
can't give it back. So I think there's a lot of ways in which we could do harm with some of these extracorporeal modalities. So we're always running the line of like risks and benefits. At the end of the day, like if an owner is very motivated and they kind of understand that we might make things worse, then we're willing to jump in and try to do it. But yeah, it's always a bit of a balance to not be the people who are like, do it for everything, right? Like everybody gets some dialysis, right? And like
Go for
Yeah, right.
check ourselves to be like, oh, actually, like,
You're
this
the guy
might
in the
not go
corner of
good.
the grand round, just like waiting for your
Yeah.
chance to jump in to offer it.
Dialysis, like it needs it, right?
And
Yeah.
are these machines, are they pediatric hemodialysis units
Oh
or what
man.
are they?
Oh yeah. So Yeah.
pull out of a
A
garage
lot of
from
times,
I know.
the current machines that we have, and we actually have two more that are coming, and one of them is for like designed for neonatal patients, so would
Okay.
be like ideal for very small things and cats. But for the most part, no, a lot of it's pediatric size, but pediatrics in humans can be anywhere from like a kid who's a year old and weighing like, I don't know, 20 to 30 kilograms to like an 18-year-old that's like
I'm
like
sorry.
a Great Dane. I don't know.
I just
So,
I just don't know a 1-year-old kid. Because with my daughter, I can't imagine her being 30 kilos.
I mean, I don't know.
I
that's
I
a
have
big
no
baby.
idea.
I just
60 pounds,
I know you
right?
don't know. I just couldn't help but laugh just picturing it because she's maybe pushing 30 and she's 8 months at this
Oh,
point. It's just like
oh,
going up to
okay.
66 pounds. It's just
Well,
made me
that's a
laugh, but
huge, I guess that's a huge size. Well, all right. They're still
no,
bigger than cats most of the
absolutely,
time.
absolutely, totally,
Um,
100% right.
I guess what I'm like saying is that, yeah, we actually a lot of times have to take that into consideration and often give blood or plasma or something in the circuit donor in order to
Yeah.
like not make
Mm.
them have other problems and to like take into account a lot of those things.
That's like an extra challenge on top of an already
Mhm.
challenging
Oh my
process.
gosh.
So
Yeah.
it's just, I mean, would it help you guys if there were companies that put out veterinary versions of what you're like? Would that simplify things dramatically on your end?
In some ways, yes. In other ways, maybe not. Because I think a lot of us have learned how to, in some ways, like I think there's a couple of adjustments that probably would make it better, like more applicable to veterinary medicine. But for the most part, it's like not really.
Gotcha.
When you get like when you get like a standard size animal, it's fine. Like really not that big a deal. But there are machines out there that we can use for smaller patients. It's just a matter of like getting them.
That
Pretty
makes
much.
sense.
Yeah. They're not
Yeah.
cheap. That's the like none of this is inexpensive
Yeah.
as
Yeah,
far as like
I imagine.
infrastructure for the cost of the machine. Some machines are less expensive, that is true, but the more like fancy, I guess, I don't know the right word that I'm trying to say, like
Mhm.
the more the machine can like handle small things, the more expensive it tends to be.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Is it based on like rate of dialysis and I guess diameter
Yeah.
size? There's probably so many different parameters based on the machine, correct?
The big parameters. So at the end of the day, we're always kind of looking at blood flow. Blood flow is like the big determiner for pretty much everything we're doing. So like rate of extraction of all your stuff, pretty much. Whatever toxin you're going after, uremic toxins you're going after, like any of that. It's all blood flow mediated. That's also going to determine how warm the patient stays,
Mm,
how much anticoagulant we have to give them, because the slower the blood is running through the circuit, the more anticoagulant they often need. The
makes
faster, the
sense.
better. So if you can like maximize that, that's ideal. But then yeah, the just the diameter of the tubing is like another big part of it. And so like how much blood volume you need to like fill up that circuit pretty much. So all of it is
Mm,
determined by that. So these like smaller machines, what they actually do is they run slower but for longer.
okay.
Okay.
So then that ends up becoming what's called continuous renal replacement therapy. So essentially we just like hook them up to this machine and it runs for like a day or 2 days kind of
Mm,
continuously instead of doing one session like per day where we would do like an intermittent hemodialysis. The longest session we could do in that setting is 6 hours. So
mm.
it really depends. So these like machines that we have on the way, the small ones is called a carpe diem for neonatals, the little teeny tiny things, right?
Okay.
That machine, it like the fastest that we can move blood through it is like, I think like something like 50 mils per minute or something like that. So I think that's the fastest it'll go. So it'll just like run kind of at that rate for a day or two.
So
If it's going really slow, that means like that your extraction is slower, right? So
okay.
that's the
Really
big thing.
seizes the entire day. Huh.
Yeah. Yeah, the
Makes
whole
sense.
day.
And so they're just like hooked up similar to a CRI then, right? That
Yeah.
it's in practice pretty similar
Mhm.
looking.
Yeah.
Awesome. I had no idea
So
about that.
jugular, like we'll cannulate the right jugular, really like the biggest catheter we can. Generally like a two-port system, so distal and kind of one port comes out here, one port comes
Mhm.
out here, and then it's just a constant like removal and return, pretty much.
Okay.
Simple enough.
So
Yeah.
straightforward. No prep time.
So I mean, where you're at now,
Yeah.
since obviously you're going far beyond what the vast majority of us learn, especially for anything renal related, right?
Yeah.
Do you see anything coming down the pipeline that should revise how all the rest of us should think or approach
Oh,
for renal disease? I know it's a super broad
oh man.
question.
Oh gosh. Yeah, actually, I think the biggest thing is that kidneys aren't these like, oh, these little things that you can just like push water through. I don't know how else to say it, but like that's not how they work at all.
Those listening, you have to watch the video for the for the physical demonstration of this.
Spanked the kidney.
You can't like push the water through. I call it sometimes it's like, like kidney waterboarding. Like there's a lot of ways that we kind of like kid about it, but yeah, they're these like really important little structures that we have developed some really sophisticated methods in order to try to like support them. And so the more sophisticated that I'm learning these machines are, that just kind of like circles back to like, oh my gosh, we don't even probably get close to what in like normal physiology the kidney is probably doing. And so it is a lot more involved than just simply like fluid mediated. Like, yes, fluids are an important part of it, but that is just scratching the surface 9 times out of
Mm.
10. So I think honestly, like our education in renal physiology and like renal homeostasis is very, 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 very basic. Like we get this much of actually this much of a picture. It's like a
Yeah.
teeny tiny little thing that's like actually really way important.
Yeah. I remember you going intensely into how there's common misuses of crystalloids that it would be preferable if everyone could get on the same page on. But
Agreed.
I
um,
fluid therapy.
I won't get you started on this since I know it's
Fluid
a trigger
therapy.
point. But I mean, given the tools you're using now, do you see any of them potentially getting cheaper or easier to use? Like, is there room to have potentially this kind of therapy in the distant future
Mm,
be more widely used?
yeah, actually, I don't know. None of this is like really hard. I think what has been the hardest thing for me to learn is some of the nuances so you don't like really mess up a patient, but like the machines themselves are
Mm.
super
Simple.
straightforward. Like depending on what you're using, they pretty much walk you through like how to set it up, what buttons to push. Some of the prescription stuff can be a little bit trickier depending on what you're trying to treat. But for the most part, I think that practice, like doing these cases, like a lot of these cases, it really like you pick it up really fast. At least I did. I won't speak for everyone, right? But it was much easier for me to catch on than I thought it would be. Let's put it
So
that way.
conceptually, it seems relatively straightforward, but
Yeah,
with
and in
which
particular,
each. Hmm?
oh, and I was just gonna say, like, and in particular, like, if you're thinking about the modality, so a lot of places are starting to use these like intermittent or these like continuous renal replacement machines more frequently because they are so automated. You can kind of put them on, set your like coagulate rates, and then you just like make sure they're doing all right. It's pretty straightforward ish,
When they're
but
thumbs up, thumbs down, like you get all
yeah.
right.
And you
That's
happy?
what's on the
Like,
display.
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
You
That's
happy?
cool. I mean,
So
that's exciting, right? Like, I feel
yeah.
like we're in a cool time in just technology in general, and especially medical technologies. So, I
Yeah.
mean, it's been cool to watch you move deeper into this area where there's just so much that I feel like you said, that we only learn such a small sliver of it,
Mm-hmm.
that I think all of us would benefit from it. I mean, kind of on that note, do you feel that, with all this additional knowledge that you are learning, and kind of the gap that exists between what you're learning and everyone else,
Mm-hmm.
do you feel we're kind of looking at a scenario where we need to revise how information is disseminated to the rest of the field? Because I know obviously we have CE, but
Mm-hmm.
are there new approaches and new channels of disseminating information that you feel would work more effectively?
Yeah, actually, this has been a recent topic of conversation in on our service. Is like,
Hmm.
how do we? They're like, it's crazy to me. There are people that still don't have any idea. This program at North Carolina State has been up and running again for the last like 5 years, pretty much, pretty continuously. And there are vets who still have no idea that we do extracorporeal services,
Hmm.
like that we can do dialysis for a really messed up patient. A lot do know, but like the number of vets that I talk to have no idea. If I like bring it up, they're like, "Oh, I didn't even know that you did that." It's kind of crazy to me
Hmm.
that it's been 5 years and they're just like, don't even know. So I think personally, the people who are doing it probably need to get out there and like interface with the referrings a little bit more. Honestly, I think that that's the way to like disseminate the availability and the benefit for
Hmm.
a lot of these cases, because I think trying to incorporate some of this into our veterinary education is one thing, but the students are getting exposed right as they go through clinics, they see it and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's the thing we can do." So I think where we have to catch up is like everybody who's already done it who didn't
Hmm.
have it, and try to like get them in the loop more or less. And so I think that us going out and when we don't have cases or things going on, like just being like, hey, let's just talk about renal physiology or what we do as a service to really help people to understand that maybe like when you have a patient that has a creatinine of 10, it's probably more than just dehydration. Like,
Yeah.
let's stop and think about this for a second. Who should I call to like figure this out more, you know?
Do you think that your service, or not even your service, but other fellowship services or any service that does dialysis or extracorporeal service treatments, do you have the energy and the time to be able to advertise yourself and your service consistently?
That's great. Sometimes no.
Yeah. Okay.
There's been like some days where I was at the hospital for like 24 hours because we're like our service, which we're trying to like fix some of this, but we're not equipped to run simultaneous cases very
Mm.
well. And
Mm.
so it ends up being like 6 hour session after 6 hour session after 6 hour session. And then we're there all like 24 hours. It's like 4 sessions. There you go. We're there all day. And so sometimes no, but our cases are not right now, they're not like out of control where it's like that's happening all the time. And so I think like at least for us, we probably could do more of
Okay.
it on our like downtime.
Okay.
Because we like last week I didn't have any cases. I did a number of consults, but I had no like active
Ah,
running cases. So I totally could have like taken 3 hours and gone and
cool.
done some CE or something.
Yeah.
So you're saying physically showing up or giving in-person talks to the hospitals in the surrounding areas, that's kind of your go-to method, or
I think so. Or
not
like,
hopping on
or
Instagram or
well, I mean,
yeah.
I think that's part of it, probably. I don't know. I think at least for like some of our referring population, I don't know that Instagram would meet them all the time, right? Like,
Yeah. Well, I guess that's my question, right? Is where do we need to take things in the next, 5 to 10 years to make sure that we
yeah.
are trying to reach as wide of an audience in our community?
Mhm.
Because I feel like the in-person stuff obviously works for the surrounding hospitals
Mhm.
that can directly refer to you. But I
Yeah.
guess in a more macroscopic sense of
Yeah.
the industry as a whole, how do we get what's in your brain out to everybody else in the most effective way?
Yeah.
Podcasting.
Yeah.
Podcasting. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
We're
Something
doing
like
it.
this. I know, you know what's amazing to me is actually like the ninja nerd people. I use them to study for boards, and like ninja nerd, they explain some physiology like amazing, like
Hmm.
amazing. So I could totally see some form of like instructional teaching type channel that could like help disseminate some of this information better. I think what you're always going to end up running up against is like the people who want that information probably will like seek it out, right?
Yeah.
So where I think things like tend to grind together is like seeking out the information and knowing like, I have a bit to learn here, and then just kind of also being like okay, knowing what you know and like doing your
Yeah.
everyday. So that's where I think like putting things in person helps kind of eliminate some of that, where it's kind of like if I've scheduled a CE with your hospital for an hour, like over your lunch, probably your hospital as a whole is going to participate. Like it's free food, right? Or whatever. They'll probably, in my brain anyways, like be more present for that compared to having to go and seek this information themselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It does. I think especially when you say, our assumptions of kidney physiology and function is so limited, a lot of people probably assume they know what's going on. So when they look at through the list of all these different CE options, well, renal dialysis, nah, I got to figure it out. It's fine. Crystalloids. All right, moving on.
Yeah.
Let's go into, into the
Yeah,
next thing. I
that's
want to
the
learn how to do
problem.
a TPLO,
10 times
you know.
maintenance. That's to diarrhea, right?
10
Oh.
times.
Well, your headline just needs to be that you don't know anything about kidneys, right? So
Ooh, hey.
that's
You think you
them
know
fighting
about
words.
kidneys, but you don't.
Um, no, it's really cool. Yeah, and I mean, I'm excited to see
Yeah.
where things go in terms of, just moving through your fellowship, and then it sounds like you're going to be in this world for, the foreseeable future as far as, pushing the boundaries, gearing things up. I mean, this is where things get better for our field as a whole, right? Is
Yeah.
what you're
Yeah.
doing. So,
I like
I mean, I guess changing gears a bit, would you? I mean, given how I know that you and Joe have had originally you were both in the veterinary world, right? Like
yeah.
was she at the same veterinary hospital that you were at,
Yeah.
or
Yeah. We work together as like techs.
Mm.
Yeah.
awesome? And then she moved into the human side of things,
She
and then
did.
she's doing also equally as fancy things over in pediatrics. But
Yeah.
uh,
Like, I like if there were ever actually a hospital that was as like robust as Duke Hospital, like Duke University Hospital, I think I that would be like mission complete for me.
yeah,
Like, yeah, some of the crap that they do there is like
Mm.
it's crazy. It's different, right? But it's crazy.
Maybe they'll have a comparative medicine
yeah.
field for you to jump
Or
into.
you started.
Yeah.
Let's start bringing it over. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I mean, do you feel that I guess looking more into just the dynamic between you two, you've kind of she's flipped into the human side, and it almost feels like you're coming around the other direction, where you're taking veterinary medicine and pulling it back around to more human like treatments, right? I guess just in terms of the dynamic in your relationship, do you feel that there's been any sort of readjustment that you guys have had? And I guess I'm comparing it to my own because,
Hmm.
obviously I've moved more into the tech side of things.
Hmm.
And it's definitely a bit of a thing that I don't think you realize until you go through the transition. It's like, oh, well, now am I perceiving you as a veterinarian, or am I perceiving you as, some other occupation?
Right.
Has that been a thing for you guys, or?
Mm. No, actually, I don't think so. Because if anything, as she is like become more kind of as she's like transitioned into an actual like an into a provider away from like the caregiver role she was a nurse and kind of has gone more into my shoes.
Mm.
She often is like, hey, how do you deal with some of these situations, right? So it's kind of interesting that I can kind of be like, oh, here's how I would handle this like
Interesting.
type of situation. But we can like talk in medical jargon, which is amazing because I can come home and be like, yeah, this patient did this with his kidneys and blah 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 blah. And she's like, oh, wow, that's
Just for the
crazy.
audience, actually, can we get I
Sorry.
know obviously Joe is your wife. Can you explain
Yeah.
what she does for a living?
Yeah. So my wife is a uh acute care pediatric nurse practitioner. So she
Cool.
works at Duke University. She kind of started in pediatric cardiac ICU as a nurse, and then went and did training to become a provider, a nurse
Wow.
practitioner, and now she is in just kind of like general peds ICU. So she sees kind of like all sorts of stuff
That's really cool. What a
randomly.
power
So
couple.
yeah,
Yeah, for real,
similar
right?
jobs, different like ways we go about doing them, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting.
But it
Yeah.
makes sense that, like you said, that you're both in provider roles in different formats, but you can still share the same
Yeah.
common language about it, right? And it's,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, no, and like, I think, like you said, if only we had some sort of hybrid hospital where,
Mm.
human and animal, that would be
Yeah. It'd
really
be
cool.
like sometimes I even think like our relationship is a little bit like a lot about medicine, which is kind of
Which is
ridiculous.
fine.
Like I'm like we talk a lot about illness and death sometimes and like really sick things.
Mhm.
But it's kind of crazy. It's nice because on one hand she gets it, and on the flip side, me too. But seeing the contrast of our two professions, right? Like every human life is sacred no matter what. And so like hearing about some of her cases where it's like terminal, but like they don't have the option for euthanasia in 99.9% of hospitals in the world, whereas I do. So like I can see this similar type of case and like have that dignified sort of way out. I guess that's
No, I see what you mean.
the way to
Yeah,
say
that's
it.
it.
Versus like some of these kids, like I could, she is an infinitely like stronger human than I could be just from that, like that alone, regardless of like dealing with sick babies all the time. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know how she does it, to be perfectly honest, because it's like ugh, knife in the heart, like
Yeah,
some
it's
of
an
the
Oh,
kids.
absolutely.
Yeah.
emotional environment
Like
for
we're trying
sure.
to have kids, and so it's like, oh gosh, like all the
Mm.
things that can happen. It's like, ugh. Anyway.
Yeah, no, you're
Super,
scared yourself with all the.
Like
super
I
big
can't
tangent
handle it.
here.
Yeah.
But since you mentioned humane euthanasia, this is a
Uh-huh.
question that I'm curious to know your input on this. Remy and I obviously are not specialized. We're kind of the forefront of a lot of the veterinary medicine that goes on. And so, based on my experience with working with their specialists and just kind of seeing how they practice,
Hmm.
especially with oncologists and a lot of those kind of terminally ill patients, right? We, I tend to talk about humane euthanasia probably more often than GPs or even other specialists. And I've noticed that specialists, just given their expertise and the volume of information and treatment options they have, that's not brought up as much as it is with me.
Hmm.
Where, and this is a very personal thing, where are
Hmm.
your parameters? Where do you, what are your limits for yourself personally where you start to then bring that up, if at all?
Yeah. These types of conversations, I think my job in a lot of ways is to let the client or the pet owner make an informed decision, right? Which to me means that I need to present all of the viable options for a patient, right? It doesn't matter. Like if they've already told me they have $2, right? I'm still going to present them every viable option for their
Hmm.
patient or for their pet. And so to me, I think that if I'm dealing with a problem that is obviously going to be terminal, I can't tell you when that's going to happen, right? You know, even if we did all the potential interventions possible, it could be tomorrow, it could be a year, right? Like all of these cases are unique individuals. And I think sometimes we forget about that. Like, yeah, there's a lot we can do, but I can't tell you that your dog in particular is gonna live another year with this cancer that I've just diagnosed, right?
Yeah.
And then I think that they have to tap into like what are their goals, right? And that is like a term that I use a lot with clients is like, so I'm just now meeting you. In this instance, I've given you terrible news, and I'm sorry that this is what our interaction is like. But you know this patient the best, right? I'm getting this interaction. I'm going to give you all the info I can give you about this problem that's going on. And now you have to decide. My job is to give you all the information and let you decide. And so I try to take it more from a standpoint of support and say like, hey, really, it's okay. Like it is okay. It is a reasonable decision to make if we choose humane euthanasia. But if you're not there yet and if you're not ready, I'll support you in doing XYZ things, right?
Got it. Yeah.
But you have to be prepared for what that looks like, right? And so as long as you're prepared for that and you understand what this might look like, let's do it, right?
Yeah.
But otherwise, I think we really have to have a really concerted conversation. If your expectations and what I've told you aren't aligning, then I think we have to revisit that sometimes. And sometimes it's like every day.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds
You
I mean, it
know,
makes
like
sense that it would.
Totally. Totally.
other times it's like they get it, they make their decision, and I'm like, all right, let's do what we got to do. And then you just kind of like jump in from there. I don't know. Those conversations are so draining and long, but like at the end of the day, if as long as they understand what they're doing, I think to me is like the biggest thing. So I'll always present it. If it's an option, I will put it out there.
That's a great answer. Thank you.
I mean, it makes sense that by the time it gets to the point of a specialist, especially if they're considering something like hemodialysis, that they've crossed a number of hurdles that shows that they do have some degree of desire to want to try to avoid euthanasia and try to see if there's a possible avenue out versus Alfred and I on ER, and I guess even you, Tyler, on the ER floor when you are. There's situations where as soon as you drop the news of what's happening, they're like, this is more than what we want. But yeah, you're in a cool area, just in terms of what you're studying. But
yeah, and it's interesting, right? I mean, like if I have a patient that I've been consulted about for like dialysis, for instance, and I think that patient probably, so say it's an acute on chronic, most of our cases that we consult on, there's no way for us to know a lot of times if they're like how much the acute, like the AKI and the CKD are playing into this, right? I mean, there was like the heck was it? The cat that had eventually, I think it had like a really chronic pyelonephritis. Anyways, it's like starting renal values were in the threes, and then eventually they were like, I don't know. I think the creatinine eventually went up to 7 or something like that. I'm just trying to like get back. When we see it from the threes to the sevens, right? Obviously, that cat has probably some degree of progression in its chronic arm, right? The acute part is the only thing we can do anything with, right? And at the time we see the patient, I have no idea which is which, right? Like maybe you just have a little bit of azotemia because that infection didn't clear, and the best we're ever going to do is like 3, like be able to get your kidney values down to like creatinines of 3. And I think it's important for the clients to understand that, right? Like I'm not going to fix anything here. I'm just going to like make your animal feel better while we try to give them the shot of getting back to 3, which is still not great. can you live for a couple months? Maybe. And like, maybe that's an option. But like, if they were already not doing great and now they're like really elevated, I'm not, I might make them feel a little bit better transiently, but you also got to be prepared for like more of a chronic problem than what I think we're perceiving. So it's a little hard sometimes. And we don't do a lot of chronic dialysis or intermittent dialysis in veterinary medicine. There are a number of centers that are set up to do that, but kind of at NC State anyways, we're just not there. We don't have the manpower, and there's a lot of
I
like
bet.
Yeah.
ethics behind like intermittent chronic dialysis because it's not like dialysis. Remember, we're not just removing their renal problems, right? Like we're not just taking away uremic acids, we're taking away amino acids, B vitamins. Like there's a lot of stuff that we are taking out when we do it. This is why I say that the kidney is infinitely better than we ever will be, right? Because we're not specific with some of this stuff, right? Like we're just taking everything we can take. And so it can really like you see a patient just go from like fat and overweight to like this like bones in a month, less than a month, because like with these chronic cases, we're just as even if we're trying to keep up with them nutritionally, it's not necessarily like a super easy process to like get them the groceries that they need to like live a very robust life.
Yeah. No, the calculus of that gets a lot more tricky.
Yeah, it's really hard. And so it's like, I don't know. I think it could be something that we do more of with some of these cases, but I don't know. It gets a little shaky when you think about it
Yeah.
chronically,
Well, speaking of shaky, I'm going to pivot here a little bit. I
That's
want to
great.
focus on the non-shaky, the very still background that you have here. This beautiful monstera. I think in our group chat for a couple of years we called you Plant Daddy or something along the lines of that because of going back to your relationship with Joe. Do you guys have any kind of similarities with how you? This is
Literally
what
on my desk. Sorry.
It blends in too much.
But I couldn't see a
It
single
does.
thing.
So like,
Obviously, you said you and Joe talk a lot about medicine. I would imagine a big part of your relationship is your share of interest with plants, right? Can you tell me more about that?
you would think that, but actually, last night she told me she hated them.
All of them?
No.
Yeah, she's
Oh,
like they're
this is
everywhere, and I
this is a
was
can of
there.
worms. I'm here for it.
I was
Like
there.
all of the plants.
They're a little bit crazy. I probably need to do a purge, like just start giving them out as gifts at this point. But
That's not a photo background. That's the real back. That's actually in the background.
actually, I have one kind of like what the background looks like. Anyway, so she likes them if they're like spread out and nice and make the house look good. And then she's like, yeah, do it. But if she perceived them to become like overrun, she's like, I hate this. I hate this so much. And if I ever ask her to like care for them, it's like meltdown.
Crosses the lines.
She's like,
This is
I can't
interesting.
handle it.
Yeah, because I guess I always assumed that to get to the level of plant, I guess accurately an obsession, I feel like there has to be buy-in from both people in the relationship. And my question was like, does she have some types of plants that she does really enjoy, and do you guys have overlap in that?
She loves succulents. Like she loves succulents, little succulent plants, and she tries to buy them often. But she kills them, so I end up taking care of them, which is fine.
Recreationally,
I keep them alive. And like then she has her little like succulents that she's like, yeah, a succulent. Well,
The
part of it
plant
is
criticalist.
yeah, she tries to put them in places they don't want to live. Like succulents like to live in really good bright light, and they don't like a lot of humidity all the time, and they don't like a lot of moisture. And she tries to put them in the bathroom because it looks better there. And I'm like, that's not how that works, babe. So like part of it, like she wants to try to some degree with certain things, but then it's frustrating because she can't just like put it wherever she wants.
Okay.
you know, like that sort of thing, which is why I think she's so frustrated with the amount of plants that I have. But my plant obsession grew out of like residency despair and COVID isolationism. Like it got as crazy as it did because literally I would just work all the time in Illinois. And in the winter, there's nothing that's green in Illinois in the winter. And like, I don't know, I would just buy plants.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that,
Yeah.
No, so
but
then I've
It's
got this like crazy bedroom full of plants, and you know she'd come to visit me in Illinois because she like lived in North Carolina while I was in residency, and every time she would come she's like, oh my gosh, I don't understand where these are all coming from. And I was like, I mean the plant shop, I go to the plant shop.
do you just have like an open tab with them?
Kind of, yeah. And then he added like an online ordering and like drive-by pickup when COVID happened, and it was like end game.
Oh,
It's
geez.
like more and more
Just for
plants.
you.
I actually haven't bought a plant in more than 6 months. So
Really?
Good for you.
yeah.
Yeah, which I wanted to ask because I know that obviously we review about your plants fairly frequently. Does it ever get tiring for people to associate you as like you're the plant guy?
Oh, sure. But I mean, I don't mind because I actually like have built a decent hobby out of it. So like I've gotten okay at it. I wouldn't say I'm an expert by any means.
But I guess I'm saying that because I think of like my own sister for a
Mhm.
while. I think it was comic books as a whole, but Batman, something. I don't know. Anyway, she had like a passing interest in it as just, a hobby that people get into. And it
Yeah.
became one of those things where, as soon as you become known as like the Batman interested person, everybody just gets you Batman stuff, right? They're like, well, people told me you're the Batman person. So then you just get overwhelmed
Yeah,
with all
right.
this stuff you don't want, which other people see, and then it just becomes a self-reinforcing thing, right?
Board
So
game
Yeah.
like, I
guy
just wanted to
right
make
here.
sure. Oh, yeah, that happened with you in board games.
Oh yeah.
Board games.
Yeah, so I just wanted to make sure you're okay and not drowning in plants because it's been forced upon you just to maintain
No.
appearances that
Mm-mm.
you're.
No. No,
I'm very
I
proud.
quite enjoy it. Hey,
I
it's a,
want
like
more.
I'm a caregiver at heart, and so and I've got all these things to like care for that don't try to bite me, that don't talk back, that don't pee on the floor, that don't need to walk to like take a crap, and that like,
That's
you
true.
know, it's like super simple. You water them, got to sort of figure out how much water they want, but it all kind of eventually blends really nicely,
Yeah.
I
I
think.
see.
Yeah.
Yeah, they give you that visual stimulation, then you keep them
Yeah.
alive. That's the
Yeah.
the mutual agreement.
Exactly. Yeah.
Hear ya.
I've got them like actually behind my computer. So like if I'm working on something and I need to just like daydream for a bit, it's like I just stare at my plants.
That
Um,
sounds
um,
peaceful.
Yeah.
it's
All right.
ridiculous.
So now that you're back here, and I think obviously you've spent quite a bit of time in NC in North Carolina, and we've talked a little bit about this personally, you and I, about food. What
Oh.
are anyone visiting North Carolina right now, especially Raleigh? What are some
Mhm.
big places you like to eat?
Oh man. All right. I think if you're visiting and you want like really good North Carolina type comfort food,
Mm,
I'll take people to this place called Beasley's. It's like chicken and waffles sort
okay.
of place. But
Okay.
they have hot chicken, like Carolina Reaper hot chicken that will literally destroy you if you so want
Mm,
to be destroyed. I don't know. I just like that place a lot. We don't go there a ton anymore, but if I have visitors, I generally will try to take them to Beasley's because they have the best chicken, literally the best
Okay.
chicken.
so it's Southern food
Oh
in
yeah.
North Carolina.
Mhm.
Okay, that's kind
It's
of the
well, yeah, but it's like its own type of barbecue. It's very vinegar based.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
honestly, I don't know that I love the North Carolina barbecue so
Hmm.
much. It's like fried chicken. It's just like the fried
That's just
chicken,
the way it
like
goes.
on point. I love the
Okay.
fried chicken. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I'd
I
be
think
down with
there's
that.
there's restaurants that I love to go to that I stopped going to just because now you're like I'm approaching my mid 30s and my body just can't handle it anymore. So I've been cooking a
Yeah.
lot more. Now you mentioned to me that that's also kind of something you've been doing. You're big stove guy with the cast iron.
Yeah.
What are some things that you cook nowadays?
Well, so my wife doesn't really eat red meat or pork, so we cook a
Okay.
lot of chicken.
Okay.
But I've just been playing with chicken. Like last night I made barbecue chicken actually with my
Nice.
own like little barbecue, but in the cast iron, and it was freaking good. I've like gotten more into like just like she'll send me a recipe and I don't know, I tend to just kind of ignore it and just like throw some things together.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I've just been like
Yeah.
experimenting for lack of a better
Pam's
word.
a recipe person. I'm very much like, nah, I'm just gonna throw things in a pot and just make it work. And
Let's
that's
see
kind
how
of
it goes. Yeah.
yeah.
And she's like, has decided somehow that I cook meat better. So I just, if we are going to cook meat, it tends to be me.
Okay. I know I asked you about whether or not you did sous vide, and you said you're more cast iron, but you got to check out if you have a sous vide, you should check it out
I
because
should. So I don't really understand what a sous vide is.
oh,
To
well,
be
let me explain this to
Oh,
you.
honest.
perfect
So
place.
you're essentially dialysizing raw meat.
Oh.
So you buy a machine that circulates water, okay,
Uh,
and it heats it up at a constant temperature. So you could set up. I think some even do it to the decimal, which I don't think you need to do, but you're essentially slow cooking food in a vacuum sealed bag because you need the surface area of
uh-huh.
contact, right?
Uh-huh.
So,
Uh-huh.
for example, a big one that people do is steak. Meats and root
Okay.
vegetables are one of the top things you'll cook in a sous vide.
Okay.
So, first, let's do root vegetables since Joe's not a big meat eater. Like broccoli or even cauliflower, right? You cook it at 165 on a circulating temperature for 2 to 4 hours. That'll
Mhm.
soften up and actually already cook the cauliflower. And what you'll do afterwards is you'll take it out, you'll pat it dry, and then you can sear it and give it a nice crust at
Oh.
the end. So although a lot of people use it for vegetables, really is more commonly used, or at least I use it more for meats. So like for
Okay.
example, steaks, you'll cook it
Uh-huh.
at that medium rare temperature and it's perfect. You'll take it out and you'll sear it, for like 30 seconds on each side. So it's perfectly pink, 129, 135 throughout the inside and then nice crust on the outside. So it's, obviously after sous vide's French, so
Mhm.
that's what it is. But yeah, you put it in a water bath and
Mhm.
it's very forgiving because right, if you put something in the oven at 450, the
Oh.
difference of 2 minutes can really mess up your meal. But
Yeah.
if you leave it in the sous vide at a set temperature of 130, it's never going to go beyond that.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you
Oh,
leave it on for
yeah.
too long, it'll break down the muscle fibers where it's a little too tender. But again,
Uh,
you have like a window for like, let's say steak, for example, of like 2 to 4 hours to keep it in.
okay.
So if you're into that stuff,
Yeah.
highly recommend checking it out.
I may have to look into
Yeah.
this
I'll send you a
because it
video.
does sound like an appealing way to start something and then forget about it for a little bit. That is my problem with cooking is like I have issues stopping at what I'm doing to like stop and cook all
Yep.
the time. So if we don't meal prep and it's like 6 o'clock, like sometimes and I'm working on something else, like
Mhm.
I just like eat whatever I find
Yeah.
compared to like being like, I'm working on this and now I have to stop and cook and I just don't want to do it.
Yep.
Um, so
That's
that,
exactly
mm,
what people,
mm,
yeah. Like when my sister, when she introduced this to me, she would have like a dinner party. And
mm-hmm,
people, she'd put the steak in the sous vide, and that way she can entertain her guests for a couple hours, and then remember the steak,
mm,
and then so
and be like,
yeah,
hey, it's ready.
yeah.
It's been
It's not
4
the
hours and I
cheapest
have to stand there.
machine. Like a
Mm.
cast iron's like $20. You can get a sous vide for like the whole setup for maybe like 1 to 200.
Oh, yeah,
But
that's not bad.
anyways, yeah.
Winning people over.
For anyone else on the podcast who likes cooking and hasn't tried it out, you gotta check it out.
Or it's the promo code, man.
I know, right?
All right.
Sponsored by Anova. I wish.
Uh,
All right, let's move on to our final segment. It's the omasarcoma. All
Dun,
right.
dun, dun.
Dun dun dun. We're keeping it alive. I think the last few have actually been
Yeah,
pretty good. So we're gonna keep this going.
I got some today. I came prepared
Yeah, good for you, man.
for a start.
Tyler, do you have anything prepared?
yeah, okay. My Oma. I've like randomly decided I want to learn how to woodwork. And so
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
taking up like whittling randomly because I don't know.
That's
One day I was
amazing.
just like,
Do
I
it.
want to learn how to whittle some stuff. So a thing, spoon,
Oh, nice.
because random,
It's a
right?
big spoon.
Yeah. Well, I originally thought like I could use it to like shovel soil or something.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah. But anyways, that's been like my latest like
That's
interest.
cool, man.
Yeah.
You'll play around with
Um,
oils and sealants and all that to figure out what's
yeah,
best. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like we bought some wood cutting boards because I was like, I hate these plastic things, they just get gross. And so I bought some wood ones and then bought some stuff to actually like take care of the wood. And I was like, oh, I've got so many plans now because I just like look at what I can do. I can like paint this and make things. Anyways, so
That's so
that's been my
cool.
wood
I love
wood.
it.
Yeah.
That's
Wood
exciting.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How,
My
how
I
about
guess
son.
you? Yeah.
I could have seen you as like a woodworking
Oh, not surprised at
person.
all.
Yeah, like I could
You
have
got the
guessed that.
beard and everything.
It's the lumberjack look.
Very messy, I will say.
Yeah.
You got to get a good like tools. Oh, in general, I guess maybe like woodworking and then tools. It's weird. I've like turned 35 and then I've like have I'm like I need tools.
I totally get it. I've gone through the same thing literally in the last 3 years. I've got everything except for a table saw.
Yeah.
I'm so in it. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like I want to make this myself and like do it on my own. Like, I
Yeah.
don't know.
I would be so nervous about a table saw just like losing fingers. I feel like it's just a
Yeah.
matter of
You got to
time.
use your like push
You
thing.
get their
I
little push
know,
stick
but
you
it's
use,
still
yeah.
like it can like pull the wood in and stuff, so it's not even that's not completely
Yeah,
safe.
That's true.
true.
Yeah.
So
The,
you
the
know,
the saws, like the miter saws, the circular saws, still scare me when I use it, but you got to make the cuts,
mm,
you
I
Mhm.
like all my fingers.
know. Remy, what's your OMA?
Yeah, so my OMA is I'm a proud new owner of a basil plant. Um,
Yay!
originally
Basil plant.
Yeah, so it's actually the first. Well, okay. So I was gonna say that that's the first like actual food plant that we own, but I guess that's kind of a lie because we also do the little like green onion in a jar thing.
Uh-huh.
So I guess it's our second
That
one, but it's
counts.
actually like a real one with dirt. Um, the intent originally was that when we were wanting to make tortellini, I realized we needed to buy some basil, and at one point we saw basil plants on sale at Costco, but it turned out it was Thai basil, not the basil we wanted. But I was like,
Ooh.
well, if they don't have actual basil, we could just buy the basil plant and then just pull all the leaves off of it and then just toss the plant away, which sounds really bad. But I was like, if it's just as cheap, like I need basil for my food. But the conclusion of it is that we decided that we're going to actually try to properly grow basil because it does taste better than the little packaged stuff.
Fair.
So we're going to give it a shot. We're going to you pull the leaves from the bottom, right? And then you let the small ones at the top grow. Is that how you do it?
I'm like really bad about growing that sort of stuff. So I
Okay.
don't actually know. But yeah, I think the more mature ones are at the bottom.
Okay.
It would make sense, yeah.
Well,
The
we'll
more
try that.
basil,
We'll
like the
try that and let
taste.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
the taste is probably going to be better at the bottom.
Hopefully, Plant Daddy's proud of you to
Yeah.
start going
You
into
proud of me,
plants
Plant
there.
Daddy?
Yeah. Yeah. Great job. Like to see this endeavor for
Dr.
you.
Plant Daddy?
Yep.
Dr. Plant Daddy. All
You
right,
know.
for my OMA, I'm gonna go into my OMA and then go directly into my sarcoma, and then we'll kind of snake back to Remy and then Tyler. All right. The last month I've been, for those who don't know, there's like a pretty significant level of body dysmorphia that I've just been born with or raised with. During COVID, of course, I've talked about this, gained a bunch of weight, still trying to lose it. I'm in the process of trying to not just like really focus too much on the weight, but trying to just get back into a routine of consistency. And a lot of the drive now is, with my daughter, with my family, it's like I want to be able to be functional at 40, So
Mhm.
I've been running like 3 to 5 miles a week. Oh, sorry, 3 to 4 times a week on top of weightlifting, and I've noticed a significant improvement in my cardiovascular, like just overall. Like I already feel like I have a pretty good low resting heart rate, but when I looked at the app when I'm sleeping, just after the first week, my resting heart rate went from 55 to 49. And that was like almost instantly from the week I just started doing this. So it's been pretty cool. I've noticed actually a good
Awesome.
amount. Just today in the morning, I was playing with with Mika. She likes being kind of surprised, so like I'll pretend to drop her. And so what I'll do is I'll squat down and squat up, and I did like 15 to 20 of those, and I was like, I felt fine. Felt great.
Yeah.
So it's been cool to be able to kind of get into to the routine of things and just trying to get back to my old self. So
Heck
Best way to do it, man.
yeah.
She's growing every day, so
getting heavier and
you're
heavier,
gonna get
you
them
know.
gains.
Mm, yeah.
10 years old.
Yeah, the sarcoma unfortunately ties a little bit with it. And again, I mentioned I'm not going to try to focus too much on weight, but what ends up happening is I haven't lost any weight. And sure, we can talk about muscle gain, water, whatever. It's just, when you're looking for that quantitative measurement to tell you that you're progressing, and you're not getting that, it can be kind of discouraging. But after 34 years of being discouraged at times of that trend, I'm trying to hold off for like and just continue this whole trend for at least like 3 to 6 months, and then I'll kind of come back to seeing how I feel about it. But either way, that's the sarcoma, but trying to put a positive spin on it.
Do you
Don't
think
look
it would
at the
help to
scale.
not like ever check your weight for the next several
Yeah, right.
months? Do you
I've
think that
done that
would be
before. I've done it before, and there's like an even balance of doing it and not doing it, because sometimes then I'll lose track of being motivated, and sometimes a little bit of that negative motivation can drive me to push myself a little bit more. But yeah, I'm not weighing myself every day at this point. I'm just doing like once a week. I also have a group of friends from back home in San Francisco that we kind of check in every week just to kind of see how we're doing in terms of our fitness goals. So it's nice.
Well, hey,
Sweet.
it sounds like
Yeah.
you're already seeing improvements in the important stuff, right? Like your heart is working better,
I
which is
know. I'm
sometimes
not having
important.
this achiness in my right arm, my left arm anymore. It's kind of nice.
uh, that's awesome.
Um,
Yeah.
so my sarcoma is well, it comes out of another OMO, which is that I went and visited my mom for a week and saw the eclipse, right? In the meantime, I trusted the health of my plant to the rest of the household. And it seems like it's not doing so hot when I came back, that it's starting to wilt a little bit and get some
Oh.
brown leaves. So it's actually my favorite plant. So we're gonna try to nurse it back to health here. But if you have any tips for me, Plant Daddy, I'm all ears.
Uh,
It's just
what
it's
is
got some
it?
like brown, like all the tips are now a little bit brown, but
Uh-huh.
it's just a very thirsty plant. Like I've
Mm.
never had
Is it a
such a,
palm? What is it?
I don't know.
What is it? I can't
I mean, do
even
you
Yeah,
want me to go get it? And
it was hard to see on the camera.
just send me a
here,
picture.
Oh yeah.
or I can
Just send
just,
me a
no, it's
picture.
okay.
The plant criticalist. That's a
I'll try. I'll try. I'll try.
Yeah, I honestly don't know what kind of plant it is, but I'll find out.
Uh, I'll try from
That's
afar.
too bad. Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
Well,
try.
No, I mean, I think it'll be fine.
yeah, I
But I
think
saw it and I'm like, no, it's brown.
it just got a
So
little
Brown.
tan, a little suntan. That's
yeah,
all.
Hey,
yeah,
some brown leaves are okay. Like they gotta shed a little.
yeah.
But yeah,
Well,
they
the
don't
good thing is
all
that
the
like
time.
there's constantly new green shoots coming out of it. So I assume it's just gonna have
I
to
do.
shed
Yeah.
the brown tipped ones. So
Yeah, for sure.
it'll be an OMA coming up.
Yeah.
It's
I'll
like
flip
my
it around.
plant's coming back.
Yeah.
Weekly check-ins.
Yeah, all right. Oh man. I guess it's my sarcoma turn. Holy moly. Sorry.
No, you're
Probably
good.
like banish my animals from this.
I was like, is this show and tell at every phase? I love this.
No, the cat. Lately, my sarcoma's been traffic. So it's like it's been rainy in North Carolina. And the
Mhm.
other day I like had road rage. I've never done it before. So
Welcome
really,
to
right?
visit Florida every day.
I
Every day.
sure. I'm like, this gets on my nerves so much. All right. The number of people who don't understand how to use a roundabout and then use a roundabout in the rain in this city
Mm.
is like infuriating.
I see it.
Stopping
Yeah.
at a roundabout
see
when
the
there are no
rage.
cars in the roundabout is like defeating the purpose of a roundabout. And then to drive at like 10 miles an hour just because it's raining. Oh, is like the most infuriating thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. The rain's
believe
like
it.
trickling off now, but it has been very rainy lately. And so it has been a thing that's been like a little bit of a thorn in my side.
I bet you got the same storm that we got in Texas when I was there, because it like moved across
Yeah.
east and it dropped like ping pong size hail. I've never seen hail that big, but
Yeah.
it was wild.
It was like very, very, very windy last week. And then there was like one day where it was like super windy and then like hard rain really fast and then like really windy again. So maybe.
I mean, I'm all for it. I love storms. So
It is a
just
nice
not
thing.
the road ragey traffic though.
Oh, it makes me so angry. But anyway.
All right, well, keep looking at your plants. Keep
Yeah,
it
it'd be
calm.
like zen out.
Well,
But
hey,
hey man, it's been awesome having you on. Yeah, no, I didn't realize I was going to learn this much about just, because before this I had actually no idea what you were doing at this point. Like I knew you were doing ECT and I was
the
just like
Chandler
there's-
Bing of our group.
Yeah. No,
What does he do?
No, I mean you're getting so advanced compared to the rest of us.
It's
It's
so
just
cool,
like
man.
now you're gonna start inventing stuff for the rest of us to use. So it's really cool to hear more in detail of exactly like the types of interventions that we're capable of doing now in the veterinary world, which is awesome because we get to help all these pets that couldn't have been helped before. So
I don't know
think
but I might have understated it, but like part of the reason I'm like really into it is because it actually feels like you're doing something. Like
Yeah.
these patients go from like death's door to like up and bright and like looking around. It's crazy. It's so crazy. Like sometimes, I mean, like working in ER, I'm sure you got it. Like you try all this stuff and they still are just like these decrepit, falling apart things, right? Like some of these cases, it's like night and day. It's nuts.
That's
really
great.
rewarding.
Nuts.
Yeah.
Which is like that's what we're here for, right?
Yeah.
Is to
So it's like
make
I'm
them better.
actually, I helped with that.
We got to have you back towards the end
Yeah.
of your fellow to kind of get a little more an update. On
Yeah, I feel like there's so many parts of this that I like really wanted to get even more in depth on that we just don't have the time for. But
Yeah, right.
yeah, dude, thank you for coming on. It's been a huge pleasure to
Yeah,
to
for
talk
sure.
about what you're doing.
Yeah, anytime.
Got anything else, Alfred?
That's all I got, man. Tyler, we'll
Great.
talk to you another time.
Yeah. See you around.
All right, guys.
Have a good one.
Take care.
Adios.